Welcome to Conscious Living Collective, transformative journey in consciousness with community of like-minded people from all over the world. My name is Tomek. I'm a scientist, teacher, and transformation coach. In this live session, we blend the latest in scientific research, the deep wisdom of mindfulness, and the art of fulfilled living. This is an invitation to have a direct experience, to rewrite your story, and to emerge with a renewed sense of purpose and well-being. Welcome to Sunday session of Conscious Living Collective. Very good to be here. And as always, I want to acknowledge the presence of wonderful you, the consciousness explorers, the members of Conscious Living Collective, and members of my Patreon program. Hello, Seth. Hello, Parvane. So good to see you here. Thank you so much for your support. Hello, Jen, Manush, Maram, Jennifer, Chelsea, Sue. Very good to see you here. Hello, Tosca. Very important topic today, something that is very close to my heart and a topic that I have been exploring myself from different angles of a very long time. Awakening consciousness, merging of science and spirit. Or, now that I think about it, I should say awakening in consciousness. Small but important difference. The part that stays the same is merging of science and spirit. I am a scientist. For those of you who know me, I love to use science as a platform of understanding the world around me, particularly the physical world. However, what I found during my exploration is that science very often is not sufficient, or be more precise, the scientific method as we know it is not always sufficient to understand and experience the fullness of the reality around us. I want to be very specific and make a difference between science and the scientific method. Science, it's very often used these days on the same term as religion, basically, or according to science. You can use interchangeably, according to science, according to certain religion or political view. However, scientific method, it's a way of exploring reality. It has its limitations, but it has its advantages. So again, scientific method, it's a very, very powerful tool exploring, but science can be used interchangeably as a way of seeing the world, as a whole belief system. And I do not subscribe to that. As a scientist, I'm a person who uses a scientific method or methodology or algorithm, if you will, to explore certain things. And today, we'll be doing both. We will try to see what there is on the intersection of science and spirit. And spirit describes the experience, direct experience of things, not as seen through the magnifying glass of a scientist or various instruments that I have as a scientist at my disposal, but as a direct experience of who? Well, of the consciousness that is you. Okay, who else we have here? T Lady Nat. First time, fantastic. Anyone else here who is for the first time? So I can welcome you particularly warmly, so to speak. Ryan, hola. Who else? Mona from Canada. Very good to see you here. Hello, Jason. Good to see you again. Jamie from New York. Yeah, Manush, I think I see your name for the first time. So good to see you here. And welcome to Conscious Living Collective. I am just scrolling through. Okay, Ryan, es mi primera vez. First time in Spanish. Very good. Muy bien. Anita, definitely not the first time. Clarissa, not the first time. Clarissa, by the way, it's so good to meditate with you When I get up first thing in the morning, I meditate, and I sometimes see you there in the meditators that I meditated with. So good to see you here. All right, back to the topic. Like I said, we will be asking a question: what really is consciousness? Something that why we consider consciousness at the intersection of science and metaphysics, of science and spirit, is because in the past consciousness was only open as a direct experience of certain spiritual traditions, but science become more and more interested, or scientific exploring consciousness through scientific method becomes more and more popular, because we understand, even scientists who reside in the world of matter start understanding that there's no understanding the reality that is around us without at least considering the concept of consciousness. So the intention for this session is to invite you to have, or to discover, or to develop a deeper understanding of consciousness, not just as a concept. That's something that philosophy does. I want to invite you to have a direct experience that bridges inner and outer world. And this is it. The inner experience, as you will have a chance to have during the meditation part of Conscious Living Collective, will not always correlate with your understanding of the world. Okay? The way we understand the world is very often limited to our intellectual perception, or the things that we learned in the past. And what we are learning, if anything, from exploring consciousness is that the realm of consciousness lies beyond the physical matter. And that's why both scientists and spiritual teachers try to bring it together and make some sense out of it. As a matter of fact, in science, David Chalmers, I believe, call it the hard problem of consciousness, because even though we can see, and I'm going to introduce the term of neural correlates, or correlates, that is very used in science to describe certain state of your brain that represent the experience. We can measure that. We can use functional MRI. We can use EEG, measuring the electrical impulses produced by the brain while having the experience. But that doesn't explain the nature of consciousness itself. It explains only the experience, or correlation. That's why we're calling it neural correlates, right? It's a correlation between the brain state and the experience itself. And I'm sure that you already are familiar to some extent with certain terms that are used by scientists to describe your conscious experiences. And one of the terms is default mode network. It's the vast part of our brain, or network with our brain, that is responsible for your experience of daydreaming, or relating to the past and projecting into the future, right? Or flow state. It's another neural correlate that when people who describing being in the zone, being in the float state, you could put them in a machine and say, oh, this is the image that represents that experience in consciousness. But even though you take a measurement, you have data that describe the experience. Is it that makes the experience what it is? A very good question to ask. The metaphor I'm using for myself in order to understand better conscious experience is that of the radio. So imagine yourself, your brain is like a radio receiver. If you depends on what radio receiver you have, that changes the nature of your conscious experience, right? You turn the knob to the left, your experience changes. You turn it to the right, the the experience changes. But the question I want to ask you right now, using the same metaphor, does the consciousness disappear in the absence of the brain or the radio receiver? So now ask yourself a supportive question. Even if you turn off the radio, the waves of consciousness, the radio station, so to speak, still is broadcasting. The waves that are received by the radio receiver are still out there. And that makes me wonder, if science does not have did not yet discover the tools to going beyond the radio receiver, does it mean that we cannot experience it directly? And that is where the spiritual traditions jump in. I particularly come from the Christian mystic tradition. I started obviously years ago. I was an altar boy. I was very devoted, mostly because my parents told me so, because everyone I knew around me was going to the church on Sunday, having First Communion, being very devoted and repeating the known formulas. But I knew at the center of my heart that what I experience is not the full extent of it. What I was made to believe, and that's why I can make that correlation between the religion and science, that very often these days, since the religious part is less believable, since the emergence of science took a place, and science want us to make us believe, oh, these are data presented, right? We have the radio receiver, and this is my radio receiver, and according to my radio receiver, the consciousness is this. The consciousness experience is this. But there's some other scientist comes and, listen, I have slightly different radio receiver, and my conscious experience is different. And I think it's like between the scientists having different conscious experiences, as in radio receivers. Religion also have different approach to consciousness. Christianity may have one way of receiving the consciousness. Buddhism, slightly different. Taoism, a bit different as well. So today, I want to give you an opportunity to actually look at consciousness not from the perspective neither of science nor religion, but have a direct experience of it. And this is possible because we studied, and people that are wiser than me studied the concept of consciousness, and they did not come up with exact definition or explanation of what consciousness is, but they developed a methodology to allow you to find out for yourself. And this is so important when coming to Conscious Living Collective, because as I tried to explain at the very beginning of our session, Conscious Living Collective is all about having your direct experience and for you to make sense of what is happening. And to continue the analogy that I started, each and every one of you has a slightly different radio receiver, a slightly different brain with similar functions, but tuned in differently because of your past experience, your upbringing, the circle of friends that you're surrounded by, the job you have, the social status. These are not all bad things. These are simply experiences that shaped our brain, the radio receiver of the consciousness, in slightly different manner. So that what makes us very unique. And I want to say that when I guide you in meditation, you may hear exactly the same words. All of you will be hearing exactly the same words said in the same way, but your experience, your conscious experience may differ because of that simple fact that every and each of you are uniquely qualified to have your own wonderful experience. And important thing is in Conscious Living Collective, as we come together to recognize and acknowledge all of your direct, unique experiences. There won't be one thing to recognize for yourself will be neither John's or Mary's experience, even though they are different, they are less valid. Both of them are experiences in consciousness, and both of them are unique as much as your brain is unique. And following the metaphor, as much as your past experience is unique, and the difference between one and the other individual. So this is the introduction, a longer one, to our session. But I want to maybe ask you, and you can answer in the comment section. When I say word consciousness, what comes to mind for you? What arises? And again, since you are all unique and uniquely valid, there's no right or wrong answer. This is just your current understanding. Julia says awareness. Wonderful. Sherry, awareness of the moment. Melissa, the observer. Frankie, very thank you so much for being here for the first time. I'm glad you enjoyed the intro. So the purpose of the introductions to Conscious Living Collective is to stir up your curiosity. So if I achieve that, I feel very happy, or my ego feels very satisfied right now. So thank you, Frankie. So Julia, awareness. Sherry, awareness of the moment. Melissa, the observer. Anybody else who wishes to share their thoughts on what comes to you when I say word consciousness? Jan, being awake. Parvane, being present. Sue, what remains without thoughts and emotions. Mar, the part of that aware, the part that is aware of I. Melissa, mindfulness. Brian, awareness and self-awareness as well. All absolutely wonderful answers. And now a follow-up question. Please, Manoj, great awareness shared with whole being. Anita, the faculty of observation. Keep coming the answers. And in the meantime, a follow-up question. When I say word consciousness, what arises in your experience? So you already shared thoughts. Are there any feelings or a presence when I say, when I ask a question, what is consciousness? AJ, alive. Manoj, higher mind. Julia, connection. Mar, I feel confused. Good. It's okay to feel confused. Sue, calm and peaceful. And a feeling of total connection. Anita, pause for reflection. Again, there are no right and wrong answers. All your conscious experiences are valid. And this is something that it's so important to recognize as we talk about consciousness. One thing that, if you look at what is happening right now in the world, one thing that is source of our continuous struggle is the division and lack of consensus on what the experience is. What we are fighting about very often is related to having different conscious experience. Let's say my conscious experience is that of money is the most important thing. The other person comes, my conscious experience is that money is not important, only religion and the believing in God is important. And the third person comes and, oh, for me, the only important thing is family. And say these three parties started coming and started arguing, not recognizing that all of them are right. All of them are correct. And obviously, I give 3 examples, but there are as many examples as there are individuals on this planet. And to come together in consciousness is to recognize that all our opinions are valid because they represent our conscious experience. And arguing about them is equal to arguing about, I like taste of orange. I do not like taste of orange. One person says orange is terrible. The other person, orange is wonderful. Which person is right? Should they start a war based on liking and disliking? Ask yourself that, because even though I use a very trivial example of what is right or wrong, everything is allowed in consciousness. And that allowing makes it valid. If something was not allowed in consciousness, it wouldn't exist. Something I have heard recently that is very fundamental, and it might be confusing to so many of you. And it was confusing to me at first. There are only 2 states: the state of existence and state of non-existence. If something exists, it must be valid by definition. If something does not exist, state, thought, perception, circumstance, we cannot talk about its validity because it's not there. And what I will invite you today in the space of Conscious Living Collective is to unite ourselves through a common denominator that is consciousness. Does it make sense? Matt says that Orange War sounds like a Rick and Morty episode idea. I'm pretty sure, even though I made up this example, I have a suspicion that I'm not the first one who came up with this concept to demonstrate certain truth. Oriana, Tomek, I'm sorry, I'm listening, but the video quality is like nothing I have never seen before. How are you streaming? Does anybody else experience any interruptions in the video quality? Because I want to find out if it is on my end. According to my screen, says my connection is good. Oh, Oriana, you mean excellent. Okay, good to hear. I thought there are interruptions in the broadcasting. Yes, certainly. I spent a lot of time, a small digression, I spent a lot of time to make sure that you're receiving me, both the sound and the video, in the best possible quality. So I'm glad to hear that. Okay, no interruptions. Good. So the intersection, awakening, I'm changing the topic of today. The topic that was on Insight Timer says awakening consciousness, merging of science and spirit. I'm changing that to awakening in consciousness, which makes it's a subtle but very important distinction. What we are about to do in our conscious exploration during the meditative part or experiential part of Conscious Living Collective, we will try to stir up our intellect and flip the coin and see what's on the other side of the receiver. So, again, your intellect, your ego, your perception that is represented in your brain structure, or it's written into your brain structure, is the receiver. And the consciousness is the awareness that you're receiving through the means of your brain. And now I want to ask you a question. Is it possible to go beyond the brain and experience consciousness directly? Put aside, even momentarily, the brain structure as it is and experience consciousness directly. I'd be curious to know. Seth, stop being the radio receiver and start being the broadcast. I think you just read my mind, because that's exactly, this is what I will ask you in today's meditation. By intellectually stimulating you, and I'll leave that intellectual stimulation until we begin. And I was kind of expecting the question that Sue is asking. But what about when people have opinions that hurt other people or beings? This is a very important question that science try to answer in a form of relationality. So consciousness only can exist, or only can be experienced as a relation part. So, for us as a human beings who do not exist outside of consciousness, but we are defined by our physical bodies, the structure of your brain, our conscious experience is defined as a relation between the broadcast at the brain. Our conscious experience as a humans would not be possible if there's no brain. So people ask, okay, what happens if you are injured? If your brain is being damaged? Does consciousness disappears? No, it doesn't. But what does disappear is your experience, because the radio receiver was damaged. In the same way, if you damage your radio receiver, okay, your radio receiver gets faulty, you won't be able to receive the transmission, but that doesn't stop the broadcast, doesn't it? Does it? Just because your radio receiver is broken, it doesn't stop the broadcast itself. And that's partially the answer. We cannot stop people from hurting each other. We cannot, because for the same reason why we cannot stop people from having different opinions, different receivers that are not compatible. If you try to receive, again, I'll be running this metaphor to the bone, so to speak. If you want to receive a transmission through your radio receiver and you turn your knob into the wrong frequency, the only thing that you will hear is static, right? And you assume that something is wrong. No, nothing is wrong. You simply are tuned in into the wrong frequency. Or looking on the other side, the other person is transmitting on the wrong frequency. And you are always tuned in into the right frequency. Consider for a moment, which position are you in? Do you think that the other person is transmitting on the wrong frequency and you are always, your knob is always in the right position? Or perhaps you can adjust the position of the knob to start receiving the frequency that other person is transmitting. And I think that metaphor in some sense answers that question, why we hurting each other? Because we refuse, and usually neither of the situation, there's two extremes. Your wrong frequency, the right receiver, right frequency, wrong receiver. These are the extreme conditions. But more often than not, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Your frequency is slightly off, and your receiver is also slightly off. And if they are off, even so slightly, that's what suffering is. That's what is conscious experience that is suboptimal, using the scientific term. Does it make sense? Mara, I just started to listen to Ananka Harris' Lights On, her 10-part audio documentary exploring the perplexities of consciousness and the cosmos. Actually, I have Ananka Harris' book, Consciousness, and I started reading it. So thank you, Mara, for bringing that up. Frankie, how can you change your frequency/receiver? That is a fantastic question. And the experiential part that we about to embark upon is our attempt to try finding the answer. What can I do as I receive all the information, thoughts, feelings, emotions, bodily sensations? How can I tune in my receiver to experience them as they are without interference? Is it really ever an interference from receiving them? Or is it about the perception that is the ego personality that clashes with the broadcast that we receive? Frankie, I will. So this is a fantastic, fantastic question and a great introduction to our practice today. Manush asked, just to clarify, is the radio receiver is out consciousness? I do not fully understand, but so the metaphor represents the broadcast is the field of consciousness, always out there. Broadcast always exists, and receiver can be on and off, or can be tuned in into whichever frequency you choose to. Sue, thank you for answering the question. Trying to wrap my head around it. Me too. I do not have answers. I am still in the process of discovering the answers, developing the answer for myself. And this is something that I invite you to. You will not find a definite answer during one session, nor most likely for the rest of your life. You always will be in the process of discovering more and more and more and adding new elements to the answer that you already have. So it's an open-ended answer. Usually we speak about open-ended questions, but I dare say that this is open-ended answer that we are seeking for. Okay. Very interesting session today. If you agree that this is an interesting session, please raise your hand. And I'm raising both my hands. Hold on, I can add some, I believe I can. Let's see if I can add some reaction to represent that. Oh, there we go. I think this is how I feel. There's some sort of illumination happening in our conversation. I believe I was able to stir up some neurocircuits, both in me and hopefully in you. And now to the fireworks. And fireworks are is the direct experience that you will have through my guidance. So I'll be broadcasting certain things by guiding you, and you'll be receiving it. And how you receive it, how you receive my guidance, by the way, it's always valid. You may react to it, you may receive it in a million different ways, and all of them will be valid. So whatever you will experience during this guided process is valid. And I leave the interpretation to you. And perhaps what comes out at the end of that interpretation will be worth sharing, because that's what Conscious Living Collective is about. It's to share your experience, both in consciousness and also in the form of words and comments. All right. For those of you who were with me right from the start, know that very appropriately, I dare say, we'll be listening to Pablo Arellano, Mystic Journey. I want to say Mystic Journey in Consciousness today. So let me start playing it for you right away. I will switch to the meditation screen. And let us begin. Every journey begins with a single step. And for you, that means to simply show up. Open your heart, open your mind to conscious experience. Recognize that however you are on the level of your body, on the level of your emotions, and the level of your spirit is valid. If you are experiencing my words right now, it means that you are indeed in the right place and the right time. And right here at the start of this journey, I want to invite you to give yourself permission to have this experience as is, moving away from trying to understand it from the view of your intellect, moving from doing the story to being the story. Who are you? Who is experiencing my words, the music, the sensations? Is this happening inside of your brain? Is this happening in any particular part of your body? Where is the experience happening right now? On the fundamental level, there are thoughts, emotions, feelings, maybe bodily sensations. Is that all that you are? Look for the space between thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations. And see for yourself, what can you find there? Who is the experiencer? Who is the I in this conscious experience? From thoughts, emotions, feelings, and sensations, moving into boundless sky that encompasses it all inclusive, always understanding, never resisting what there is. In conscious experience, you are always loved, you are always worthy, you are always enough. You have arrived. And now it is time to consciously shift your awareness from the abundant sky back to your physical senses that define the reality around you as is. Starting with your sight, connecting with brighter and darker spots in front of your eyes, recognizing being immersed in the music, recognizing the sound of my voice, briefly touching upon senses of taste and smell, and arriving in the sense of touch that defines the boundaries of your physical body and your connection with the space around you. You have arrived back into the reality of matter, but you have been transformed in your conscious experience. You can take with you what you will and left behind anything else. When you're ready to finish, simply take one deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in your own time, open your eyes. Welcome back. Thank you for meditating with me. That was truly amazing. I think Pablo Arellano outdone himself creating the mystic journey. It was such an incredible canvas to traverse in our meditation. How did you feel? Did it feel like a journey in consciousness? Did you awake in the consciousness that is primary? It goes beyond the brain and the receiver of our mind? Because certainly I did. I had those moments of clarity, and I hope they were reflected in my guidance. The one word that really came to me, and I shared that with you, was, we have arrived. I have arrived. We have arrived. Thank you, Parvane. Anita, I touched into the space between. And you see, when we say those words, a lot of conscious experience is lost. But if you are transmitting on the appropriate wavelength, you can relate those words to your direct experience and see for yourself if that resonated. And if it doesn't, that's okay too, because you have your own direct experience that is valid in itself. Michael, I only caught the end bit, but I had a strange idea. I was linked to the distant version of myself in some sort of strange quantum way. We were waving at each other, thank you. And I'm sure if that's what was your experience, that exactly would happen, because once again, none of the experiences that you're having are invalid. If they were invalid, they would be not there. So if you're having them, they're already valid and they have the right space. Saba, love the radio analogy dealing with a loved one who has Alzheimer's, and clearly she is broadcasting just at the wrong frequency. Beautiful. I get that frequency, but not everyone. Saba, using if you are with someone who has Alzheimer's, it means that the person that is the receiver of consciousness, they just switch to different frequency. That's what it means in this analogy. It doesn't mean that the consciousness changed. It means that the receiver was altered in a way that we are no longer understand from the perspective of having different receiver. Again, it doesn't make the experience of persons who we diagnose with Alzheimer's an invalid experience. It's not wrong frequency. It's not, the consciousness is still the same for all of us. Just the nature of the receiver has changed. And this is an important thing to understand in the light of what we said today. Right? We cannot dismiss anyone on anything. The moment we start doing that, we get into trouble. As a matter of fact, the way we experience world right now, the reason why we struggle so much is because we invalidate some other experiences and only relate to our own. Yeah, I'm also glad how many people joined us. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Parvane, for your very, very kind donation. And thank you so much to all of you who had a chance to experience something on your own. And now having that feeling inside of you, if that experience was something of significance, that's where all your generosity comes valid. This is just, I can understand it, all your donations as the expression of your generosity that flows from the moment as you feel right now. Only donations, your words, your comments, your presence come from the state of validity of who you are right now. And it's a representative of the state of consciousness that you are in, the frequency that you are in. So that's why it's so much appreciated. Thank you, Parvane. Thank you, Saba. Thank you, Jennifer. That's very, very nice of you. Yeah, Manoush, I was going to places just before you mentioned I was total telepathic experience. I could explain the word telepathy and what it means and how it's being misunderstood, but I'm glad you had that experience, Manoush. I think it's exactly what it is. We always consider telepathy as something supernatural. I don't believe it is. Because, again, consciousness is the same for all of us as we are here. And this is the important thing to take away from this. Monzor asks me, do you think there is a link between heart rate variability and frequency? I noticed that when I go deep into meditation, my HRV spikes, which is a measure of heart coherence, and I feel like there is correlation between breathing rhythm and frequency rhythm. I'm a big fan of using HRV as a metric to indicate certain states. And you are absolutely right. I'm using my iWatch and my heart rate monitor to measure my HRV, and they are indicative that something is happening. But in the same, using continuing our analogy, just because you measure the experience, right, it does not change the experience. So in order to have, let's say, a very pleasant experience, you will experience it, you will have the experience, and then you collect data based on that. Data do not account for the experience. They are simply a description of the experience. And the data may help us to come back to the experience, but they do not equate with the experience itself. So I love measuring stuff. I measure my sleep, I measure HRV, I measure different metrics, my heart rate, and so on and so forth. But I always come back to the direct first-hand experience of what it is, because that's fundamentally what this is all about. Just because you say that orange has a sweet taste, it's not the substitute for taking a bite of an orange and having the experience of the orange. So Monzor, you're right on the money. I very much resonate with what you are saying. I also correlated my deepest state of meditation with changes in my HRV, to answer your question. But I stopped using HRV because I no longer needed to validate my experience, maybe to answer your question. Mel, where will you find the replay? I am broadcasting this right to my YouTube channel. So all my sessions of Conscious Living Collective are available on my YouTube channel for you to rewatch the whole or the segments of it. So you're more than welcome. Anne felt a sense of openness. Thank you, Anne, for contributing to creating this sense. Helen, you and Pablo are a magical combination. Your words of wisdom just grow and grow. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Helen. I think I agree with you that Pablo Arellano came at the right time and the right place, and the combination was very powerful. I do not take credit. This is a collaboration, I think. Thank you, Monzor. Thank you, Seth. And thanks to all of you for your presence here, for your contribution and direct experience in consciousness. I really hope and wish to you that it will continue, not only during Conscious Living Collective, but outside of it. And for those of you who know me, go to my profile and see a lot of tools, a lot of stimuli, so to speak, in the form of guided meditation and insight timer courses to stir your experience and bring you more into consciousness, to help you awaken more in your consciousness. And if you benefit from it, everybody else benefits at the same time. That's the whole point of Conscious Living Collective. If you benefit from my words, from my guidance, I will benefit too. Indirectly, but nevertheless will benefit. So thank you so much. And since Pablo Arellano was guiding us so beautifully through this experience, I will finish up playing you the very mystic journey that we were listening during the meditation. Have a wonderful day, pleasant night, wherever you are. And I look forward to connecting you next time.